Hey everybody, welcome to the Sideline Report. I'm Marvin Jackson, and interesting times in old DC as Commanders head coach Ron Rivera fires the defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio and the defensive backs coach. And that was all after this big disappointing loss in Dallas on Thanksgiving Day, which I call the Turkey Leg Bowl. And with me today are Lou Holder, Donna Hopkins, and our special guest, Ken Harvey, former Washington Star linebacker, has joined us. And very appropriate because we're going to talk some defense, and this man knows defense. But first, you've got a poster behind you, Stepping Stones, a great book that you wrote. I've read it, and it's a great book. Talk about that and what else you're doing right now.
Just real briefly, it's my life story, the journey going to the pros. But the story wasn't an easy, straight arrow. You know, I dropped out of high school, had to go back to high school, went to a junior college, and from a junior college, getting drafted to the NFL. So, you know, life is about steps, and that's the title, Stepping Stone. And now I'm working with an addiction wellness treatment center called the Williams Center. So, you know, for those who suffer from addiction, and addiction could come in all formats. It could be your phone, your computer, it could be drugs, it could be so many other things that people are looking for help. And there's a lot of embarrassment and stigma behind that. So we're out trying to help and make the world a better place.
All right. Well, let's see if we can make the Washington a better place for football. Ken Harvey, you started off, man. What's your reaction to the firings?
Well, I found it interesting that they said, and this is what I read, that they said Ron Rivera went to the ownership and said, I'm going to fire, Jack Del Rio. I would have thought the ownership would have went to him and said, you need to get rid of somebody. So I think this was probably a move on his part to kind of at least save his job for the end of the season, and also potentially to set himself up to show that, since he's now the defensive coordinator, that he can do more than be just a head coach. He can also be a coordinator and potentially line him up for another spot somewhere else.
Yeah, when you look at this Washington Commanders team and just the coaching situation, I go back to Chris Harris, who was the defensive back coach the last few years, and the defensive backs did not play like they are playing right now as far as out of place, getting beat on big plays. I mean, it was a debacle of a game in Dallas, and it started also with the Chicago game back there. If you're going to make changes, you should have made some changes pretty much after that game, because this defense fell apart. And so Chris Harris, the defensive back coach, he had this team 8th in the NFL, and this defense was 4th. And then you bring in a defensive back coach that pretty much had just coached high school and maybe a little college. He never should have gotten that job as a defensive back coach, because this defense, it told the story as far as that secondary. When you scratch your head and said, oh, how can this defensive backfield be so bad this year, looking at the last few years? It's because if you don't have the quality of coaches in here, you go back to Coach Gibbs, bringing in Coach Bucco and Pettibone. He brought in solid coaches. And I think that this regime did not bring in those solid coaches because, after that Dallas game, you looked at the way this team played. You had to make changes, moving forward. A little bit too late for this whole organization. And as Ken and all of us was talking offline, is that, change is going to come with this group if they want to move this team forward. And it's just a matter of time as far as before the season ends. I think that they're just going to ride it out with Ron Rivera, but he knew that he needed to make a move, being that the defense looked like they did in these last 7 or 8 games.
The frustrating part for me, guys, is that, Ron Rivera brought in Scott Turner. He brought in Jack Del Rio. Both of them haven't worked out. I mean, these are all under Ron's watch, and as Ken said, if you're going to set yourself up to see what you can do, you don't set yourself up to be the defensive coordinator when the Miami Dolphins are coming into town as your next opponent. You know what I'm saying? So again, I told you, Marvin, I told you, Donna, they should have made this move before the Seattle game, right? So again, now it's just, that was the wrong person that got let go, because you needed to make a wholesale change, at least to see what, Eric Bieniemy can do. So at this point, it is kind of going in December just with the just deflated mindset, because does anybody on this panel think that Ron Rivera is going to do a halfway decent job as a defensive coordinator when you got San Francisco, Dallas, and you got Miami as some of your opponents coming in here? It just doesn't make any sense. He had to make a move because it was just embarrassing. But again, you're the one who brought you're the one who brought Jack Del Rio in here and Scott Turner, and it hasn't worked out.
And also, Coach Rivera has not called plays since 2018. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays about as far as his management on the side. And then also,
Donna, Emmanuel Forbes wasn't even playing. Like, that's your number one pick. Emmanuel Forbes is not playing. Quan Martin has been underwhelming. This was supposed to be a defense that was just this close from being a top 10 defense, and it's been horrible. Horrible.
Can I just jump in, or
yes, you can just jump in.
How we do it? Okay, so one, it's hard when you start off first and then everybody behind you is so intelligent and they give such good answers. I want to rephrase what I just said. All right, here we go. The Commanders, I think what they did is like a boxer who gets hit early on and they're caught off balance, and the rest of the fight, they're off balance and getting beat, right? So they all depended on the front four. They thought that was going to be the lifesaver on the defenses, that the front four was going to be so dominant that they didn't have to do it. As a matter of fact, they got lazy. They didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to game plan. They didn't have to do anything else. And our front four is going to get to the quarterback and make all the tackles, and we'll have a great defense. That's kind of lazy coaching. And like we're all kind of alluding to, it all comes down to the coaching. The coaches need to assess what the players have, need a game plan. And if you don't get it right the first time, then you figure out what the second time is. I think Bieniemy, as great as his reputation is, he started off trying to make Sam Howell like this quarterback that could drop back and to do whatever. They didn't have the line for that. He thought he was Patrick Mahomes. They didn't have the line for that. So later down the season, he started adjusting, whether some quick passes out, roll out to the right, roll out to the left, and the offense became a little bit better. But there was an adjustment, and it was way far into the season when it was something that should have been done earlier. So the whole team, I think, was dependent on itself being so great. And when they weren't, and when they didn't step up to it, they didn't know what to do, and they were off balance for the rest of the year. There's no way you should lose to the Giants. There's no way you should lose to Chicago. There's no way you should lose to these teams who are probably some of the worst teams. And then you just think that you're better, but now you realize you're at the bottom of the bottom. You're the worst team. Defensively, you're at the bottom of the barrel as a defense, which is sad.
Hey, Ken, like you said, Eric Bieniemy made changes after the start of the season. You didn't see Jack Del Rio make changes. And then you let go two of your defensive ends. And how do you expect to be better on defense when you let go a Montez Sweat and a Chase Young, and you expect for the front, which was struggling already, to be better? So the decision, they kept saying, we won't draft picks, but it's hard to get defensive linemen, defensive ends, Ken. You well know, you play defense, to let two guys like them go. If you let one go, definitely not both of them, but they needed to make some changes earlier on, because this defense was underachieving from the start of that. You saw it in training camp, you saw it in the preseason, and you definitely saw it throughout the stretch of this season. This team just wasn't going to go anywhere defensively.
And the thing is, though, Jack Del Rio, Ron Rivera, they cut their chops in this league playing the linebacker. The linebacker play has been so underwhelming, Ken Harvey, that even if the front four wasn't getting in there, the whole Jamin Davis, Corey Barton, all of that. I mean, it was just bad. I mean, again, there was nothing exotic about, as Donna said, nothing exotic about Jack Del Rio's play call. There was no blitzes. Okay, so you couldn't get home with 4. You weren't sending anybody. And it was just so easy from even the press box looking down that, you got to make a change. But your linebackers were horrible too.
Well, that's the thing. So they decide that they want to get rid of the 2 pass rushers. And you hear all these rumors that you had one who wasn't following the system and that he wasn't doing everything. But it's like a marriage counselor. At the end, they're going to ultimately say, you got to look at yourself. And you got to say, what am I doing as a coach? If my players aren't listening to me, if they can't follow the scheme, then obviously I'm not coaching well enough and I need to do something to adjust. Their defense was one-dimensional, as you mentioned. The defense was set up that the linebackers were average and you didn't bring them to another level. And I think the good coaches know how to bring players to another level. Bad coaches will either keep you at the same level or make you worse. And I experienced that, like when you'll see some players leave a team and they go from other teams and they become superstars at other teams because they fit into the system and the coaches help make them become great. Highlight what they're good at, use that to their advantage. Bad coaches can take good players and they come to a team and that player become worse or become average because they don't know they don't understand how to pull out the best in a person. And I think that's here with the Commanders. They're not coaching well. And it comes down to ultimately at the end, it's the coaches.
And the blown coverages, Ken, I mean, there were so many blown coverages almost every game. And
the DB
you would think that the defense coverage schemes were complicated or something because the guys were blowing it. But I don't know if that was the case. I think they just weren't coached well. And, Ken, you were there. You've been there, except you've never seen that before where you had a defensive coordinator who was fired in the middle of the season.
No.
Another note locally in college football, the Maryland Terrapins finished 7-5, second straight year 7-5. So they are bowl eligible. So I do want to give well wishes to Coach Mike Loxley, my Ballou High School alum. I want to give him some well wishes, even though the last game he beat up on a team called Rutgers, which I think there's somebody sitting there.
You had to do that, didn't you? You had to do that, didn't you? Yeah. But hey, listen, Mark, while you're there, I mean, Howard going to the Celebration Bowl. Right. There's just so much good football going on in the area, man, that is just fun to see on Saturdays, because on Sundays we've been deprived of some good football as of late. So for Bowie State's run a couple of years ago, Howard going to the Celebration Bowl, and we all know in this quadrant right here that Damon Wilson is going to get Morgan State cooking in a minute. In a minute. So it's not going to be long before Morgan State is going to be in the mix doing some stuff. So on the college level, it's exciting to be in this area.
No question.
And I remember that Rutgers comment, Marvin, for a long time.
I thought Rutgers was going to win, though. David,
and you know what? Since y'all thrown all that stuff,
I told him I thought Rutgers was going to win because Rutgers had a good team this year.
Oh yeah, they'll be back. We got our coach back, so we'll be back.
Yeah. I know you're talking about football. I want to give a shout out to Vanessa Blair down at George Mason. That women's program is 7-0 right now.
Wow.
And like Lou said, it's a lot of great things going on.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to give a shout out to my girl down there at George Mason.
And I want to give a shout out to my boys who one's in Spain riding a motorcycle and the other one's doing cybersecurity for a company. So everybody's giving shout outs, man. Okay. I want to give a shout out. I want to be part of the team.
Only Ken Harvey.
There you go.
Can I give one more shout out, Marvin, while we're here?
Yes.
London Fletcher, semifinalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Wow. And I think he should be there.
Yeah. Many should be there. Brian Mitchell. I mean,
many.
Ken, I mean, as a linebacker, London Fletcher's career, I mean, if he jumped around and did all the antics that Ray Lewis did, I mean, he is he has numbers that are unbelievable. So it's good to see him being noticed.
Yeah, his
that's
numbers are right there with the all-time greats.
The people vote sometimes just off of the show as opposed to the numbers, you know. So definitely.
All right.
And he's a good dude too.
So don't go away. Sideline Report will be right back.